Thank you so much for speaking to us today. It's a pleasure to really engage you on economic issues in Nigeria. And I'd like us to start by just hearing your perspective on the economy today. It's a historic recession, the first time in 30 years that many are experiencing a recession in this country. And what, in your view, are the critical steps needed to move the economy on the path of sustainable growth?
You rightly said it, we are in recession, but it was long in coming. Anybody who has been following the pattern of development in Nigeria and the way things were being done would have known that a crunch was on its way. It was going to happen. And so I find it difficult for people who think that this was sudden and unexpected. It wasn't unexpected. And people who feel that the government should use a magic wand to clear the whole stable and make it a very virile and sound, robust economy, just like that. I think it's a pipe dream. Having said that, I think there's still a lot of scope for us. You know, if you are not aware of your surroundings or your resources or your whatever it is, you will not be in a position to fix it or harness the opportunities. I think this is a story of lost opportunities. It's a story of, I think it is what one might call taking a lot for granted. I think we took a lot for granted because we positioned ourselves wrongly. We positioned ourselves as an oil economy, but Nigeria has never been an oil economy. For me, the oil has been a distraction to the economic development of Nigeria. Nigeria is an agricultural economy, but here we are. I think we'll soon realize, and I think we are beginning to realize that back to the basics. And that is why the government is now trying to put a lot of emphasis on agricultural development. I think it's a wake-up call.
Fixing the country is obviously a huge challenge. The current government really battling to take the country out of recession right now. What do you think are the major critical steps that need to be taken to put Nigeria on the right path?
Well, the major critical steps will be to try and provide some of the rudiments that are necessary to keep the economy afloat. One of such rudiment is foreign exchange. And I said we positioned ourselves wrongly as an oil economy. Now the oil sector has more or less packed up, and then we find ourselves lacking because we depended on a sector we are really not in control of. We are bringing out the oil, but we are not in charge of the pricing of the oil. We are not in charge of the marketing. So we are receivers. We more or less drilled the oil, exported it, and then used the resources to buy oil products, petroleum products. So it was just like that. Morning in, morning out. And then we are not in a position, no other source of foreign exchange. I mean, it's just like a country, we are playing the ostrich. You dig your head in the sand, but the whole body is covered. So we thought we were rich.
So in your view, what's the best approach beyond trying to get resources from oil to address this forex shortage?
First of all, I mean, okay, the oil sector is there. The government has made a move towards agriculture and other sectors. But agriculture has a gestation period. It cannot happen overnight. You have the law of the harvest. You know, you plant and then it germinates and then develops, and before it starts yielding fruit. Another way of, I think the best way, in my opinion, is to harness the private sector. Make sure that you have a lot of FDIs coming in, and even the portfolio investors. But unfortunately for us, this has not been possible. It has not been possible because foreign direct investments require, first of all, a sound macroeconomy situation to come in. Not only about sound macroeconomic situation, the regulatory environment has to be welcoming. This has been lacking.
Speaking of the regulatory environment, recently we heard the central bank put out a statement suggesting that those that are opposed to the current forex policy are unpatriotic. What's your reaction to that? Because many people, especially offshore, are critical of the way that policy is being rolled out right now.
People are not happy that in a country like Nigeria we have multiple exchange rates. That alone makes foreign investor weary as to, you can't plan. So what exchange rate are you coming in? And what exchange rate are you going to go out? In June last year, the central bank came up with a policy, foreign exchange policy, which I thought was going to be, at least bring a little bit of sanity in the whole system. But it hasn't been followed. They may have their difficulties in making sure that that is going. But you see, sometimes the central bank has only one source of FX, foreign exchange. And that source is not even certain. You know, it's a major variable, whether they are going to have an inflow or not, whether there's going to be accretion to the reserves, external reserves or not. And then how do you deploy the resources you have to cater for all the gambits of the requirements of the economy. So it's a Herculean task, and I would think maybe the central bank said that because they don't think the people are appreciative enough of the way they're juggling, you know, and the whole, you know, resources are very small and tiny, and the demands are various and many.
You're one of the early investors in MTN Nigeria, and last year the company was in the news a lot for the challenges it had with the authorities here. And given how everything played out, what in your view is your rating of how welcoming Nigeria is to foreign investors?
Forget about MTN. Look at the whole regulatory environment. I think this is where we should look at. Because if you are not interested in telecoms sector, you will look at other sectors, other segments of the economy. What is the situation there? The whole regulatory environment in this country is not welcoming so far. I think the government says that they're trying to more or less moderate the impact of regulation. We talk of having an amelioration of the regulation. But it's always the case in most developing countries that regulators do not think that their actions should be sector enhancing rather than being a gamekeeper, just waiting for somebody to fault and then you pounce on him. But how do you get that sector enhancing? And I believe, that's my own opinion, that in any country, there should be a harmonization of regulation where the various regulatory bodies should sometimes meet and say, okay, what is the impact of our actions? How are we helping the economy develop? Even the security forces, by detaining or capturing thieves, they're also helping. But it's negative in a sense, but it is positive when you look at how their outcome would enable peace of mind for an investor. So, I believe that they should all come together and talk amongst themselves.
Well, looking further ahead, what in your view is the growth potential for telecoms in Nigeria?
I think the growth potential is huge, but there are so many difficulties. First of all, even getting your masts located, location of masts, getting the right of way, and then you have also multiple taxes. If various states, they have, because you see, when you look at, especially when you look at MTN, you think that this is a cash cow, and therefore I think it's most states think of it as if you lack something, at least this is where you go, and once you pounce on MTN, you get something comes out. So you have that. I wouldn't say uncertainty, but you have that challenge because you know it's going to come, and so you are more or less juggling with the regulators, not only the key regulator, which is the NCC, but then the other states where people are trying to increase their internally generated revenue. So, that's the main source. The biggest source of revenue. If you want to get it as quickly as possible, then you start taxing all the masts in your state and then backdating them when some of them, we had a case where a state government said we should pay tax and backdated it to the date MTN started operation in this country, not in their state.
2001?
Yes, but then we went to court, and there was the courts just quashed the case. So but they were testing their boundaries, and I don't blame them.
I hear you. Okay, but let's flip to the banking sector because obviously that's a key part of your career. You are one of the investors in what were widely known as the new generation banks, and many of them have really emerged to be one of the leading players in the industry today. What for you is the future of the banking industry in this new digital age?
When you're talking about banking, banking services go in tandem with the economy. And they don't work in a vacuum. If the economy is improving and services are being demanded, then banks should now step up the bill. I always look at banking services as the blood in the system. The blood doesn't initiate anything. If you want to scratch your head, you need your hands. But if there's no blood flowing in your hands, then you can't touch your head. So you find that other systems, other areas have to work. There has to be macroeconomic stability. There has to be macroeconomic stability.
Are you optimistic there will be macroeconomic stability in the near term?
Well, it depends on whether the Ministry of Finance and Central Bank are shaking hands properly. Meanwhile, I don't think they are. The intention is there. But I think one of our major problems here, I talked about regulators meeting together, is I think we work in silos. And it's not good. It's not good. We ought to more or less present a panorama of, and the tapestry of the economy. And everybody knows where you're coming in and where you're getting out. We don't have that yet. I think it is being aimed at. Listening to the Vice President the other day, he was speaking about getting the economy on a sustainable growth trajectory. I think if we are able to do that, you see, but words are cheap. Words are cheap. It's the implementation. Now, is it his own sentiment? Is it a wishful thinking? Or are we actually trying to do that? And how far are we going to do that? Because you see, unless you do it, it becomes also a lost opportunity. But that is what we should do.
You mentioned that words are cheap and the patience of many is really running thin. And last year in particular, there was this whole conversation around perhaps restructuring the country as perhaps a way forward to ensure that economic growth and development can be achieved. What's your perspective on that? I know you're from the Southeast, and indeed you've played a relatively prominent role in trying to galvanize investments into that area.
Because the government is not doing much there. So we believe that, and the private sector should step up. And the private sector in this country should step up. But the private sector needs development. I think this is one of the things most governments don't realize, that the private sector needs to be developed. And the government's effort in developing the private sector is important to make the private sector respond to the demands being made of it. Now, when you talk about restructuring, are you talking about political restructuring, or are you talking about economic restructuring?
I think both are on the table essentially, because there is a sense, as I mentioned, of an impatience in terms of the direction that the country is going. And many perhaps believe that some regions could be a little more independent in how they are able to galvanize their economic policy. Perhaps we could see more progress. So essentially it is a mix of the two.
For me, I think everybody has been saying that. But we have to go it in steps. Even if you do it today, things won't change. Because some of the things we've mentioned here, foreign exchange, this, that, they won't be in supply. But in terms of regulating the economy, the way the country is structured and the autonomy which the state governments have, they can nullify any economic move the government can make. Let's say if the government wants to now start, if you are purely to effectively restrict demand, if you're talking about demand management, you're talking about federal government. But the states, according to our constitution, has to receive their own allocation of resources. And once that is made, the federal government has no control as to how that money is being spent. And don't forget that the states are closer to the people than the federal government. So unless there is a way of harmonizing regulation, how does the federal government's policies as a whole impact the states and have it cascaded down from the top to the bottom, to the local government area? I think this is one of the greatest problems we have, because any government or any governor can stay in a state and say, okay, we're going to spend money purely on this. And you find that some of them are doing nothing but creating monuments. And monuments don't put food on the table. You know what I call monuments? You know, some of them you see roundabouts, bridges, not bridges, roundabouts decorated nicely. And everywhere in this country you see them. It's good. Very nice to behold. But they are very expensive in terms of the resources being spent on them and what those resources could have been used to ameliorate some of the difficulties we have, especially in creating of employment. We have a lot of problem in employment, youth unemployment, even though one doesn't know how much of that is employable. But right now, we need to retool that area, do a lot of retraining, and get some sort of skills, and let's learn how to dirty our hands and go to agriculture, which is our mainstay, agriculture, and we can do it. The beauty about this country is that the people are trainable. They are trainable. Nigerians are very accommodating people all over the country. Very accommodating. I'm sure you find us very pleasant at times. But we have to get our planning right.
Right. Final question before I let you go is to have you reflect on another area that you're invested in, the power sector. And recently, it was reported that Geometric Power, which you are invested in, said that it should be able to generate over 1,000 megawatts of power by the end of this year. As many continue to complain about the challenges in the power sector, what's your reaction to all that is going on in that industry today?
Well, the power sector is very key to whatever we are trying to achieve in this country. And therefore, there is the need to focus on it. And the government, I think, is doing that right now. But you see, when you are trying to build on a land that has already been, dented, a ditch. First of all, you have to cover that ditch and then start building. The problem of the power sector has been very, very, has been there for a long time. Now, both in terms of transmission, in terms of distribution, and then in terms of generation. In trying to solve it last time, the previous administration more or less privatized the distribution. But the question is, the people who were beneficiaries of this, what is their background? What is their capacity to lift this, both financial capacity and technical capacity? These are the issues which the government is now trying to address. Initially, the central bank came up by giving them some money, funding, and hoping that thereby they would up their act. But it didn't move the pin. But it has to be done if we want to achieve anything. If we want to prove ourselves to a sustainable growth pattern, it has to be done. Because without it, we're wasting our time. Now, you're talking about geometrics. Geometrics was a model. It was different, it was a model we tried to, hoping that it would be the model people can, copy, where you have generation, distribution, even in transmission, within a sector. I mean, a regional sector. But it will come. That will be, yes, they're right. You will see it in operation 2017.
We're hopeful that
I keep my fingers crossed on that.
Indeed, we certainly have to, given all the challenges that people are reporting in that sector. All right, just a final comment, if you can, for us as you leave. 2017, in particular, what's your outlook? What makes you most optimistic and most concerned about 2017 as an investor in this country? In a few words.
In a few words, stability. I would want, see, the government is battling with a lot of security issues. So you can't achieve stability without security. You can't even achieve economic development without security. So that is one. We're also talking about stable policies, stability of policy, so that to enable any investor to have the, let the policies be predictable. So if I'm investing here, I know A, B, C, that I can do this. If I do this, this is going to happen. If I don't do this, this is going to happen. That predictability has to be there. Will it be there? I think it will, hopefully. I'm an optimist. You have to be optimist to survive in anywhere in the world. So I'm an optimist. And I believe that Nigerians are itching. They are tired of being poor. And they're all ready to work. Because you see, splashing money, you can't eradicate poverty by giving money, those palliatives. I think this has been the bane of past policies, where we now say, okay, somebody just throw money at it, this one throw money at it. But somebody has to decide to come out of poverty. I can't make you come out of poverty. Neither can you make me come out of poverty. It's a decision, your decision to come out of poverty. And the only way to come out of poverty is to work yourself out of poverty. And this is what I'm now seeing, that some of the young men, even those who are graduates, are trying to go into agriculture. Nobody is forcing them, but they have no choice, and which is good. I think by next year or two, we'll be seeing a lot of positive results.